Danny Cha. I am the counselor working with students in grades 3 to 5. The next slide will be for me. We're going to start with 3 deep breaths, and then we'll get started. Okay, I hope that was a refreshing moment of pause for all of us during our busy times. Chris, do you want to go over?
Absolutely. So hopefully the strategies that we talked about last week from Positive Discipline came in handy during our long weekend. We had a link to the Positive Discipline website. We talked about not pampering, compliments, encouragement versus praise, and asking versus telling. And just, again, remembering to go back to pausing in the moment to decide what is the best course of action when you're engaging with your child.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I like to start all of my Zoom classes with a little temperature check. I just feel like during times like this, it's highly effective for people on Zoom to kind of know like how we are. So I'm going to ask you the same questions I ask all my students. What zone are you in? And you can use the chat function or an emoji to express how you are feeling this morning. So I'm feeling like that. Okay, the green. That's great. Awesome. Greenish. Okay. I've been very tired these days because I live on Tejo and there's been construction that's been going on right next to the place I live. So I haven't been getting a good night's sleep and I just feel like I'm very tired and slow to start in the morning. 2 sessions ago, we did a little session about zones of regulation. And so I kind of want to do a little recap on the topic that I shared that week, because I'm going to continue talking a little bit more about zones today and build on top of what we shared, what we continue to share about zones. So last time for zones of regulation, we talked about zones across the day, and it's a tool where you can start cataloging the daily schedule of your child and then start mapping the different zones as they go in and out of them. You can do them periodically or maybe quarterly throughout the day and try to notice different patterns that pop up. So by doing so, you'll be able to tell after a while, like, hey, you know what? Before every math class, my child is in the blue zone. Hey, right before, at the end of the day, my child is starting to peek into the yellow and red zone. And by having a strategy or tool like this, you can start putting proactive measures prior to the triggers. And these are tools or strategies that we encourage kids to explore, and I mean adults to also explore and practice in a healthy way to regulate those things before they happen. And the second strategy that I shared was the zones tool worksheet. And just to get a list of different types of tools and strategies and to identify, hey, what might work for me in the blue zone? What might work for me in the yellow or red zone? Or what's something that I can do to help me stay in the green zone? And this is to explore the different options, because not everything works for one person. Like for example, Chris might say, you know what, for me, I like to read after a long day. And for me, I know that does not work for me at all. For me, I like to listen to nature and stuff like that and just kind of unplug. And, so everyone has different strategies. It might overlap, but also like not all the things that work won't work all the time. So what I mean by that is, we like taking deep breaths, but sometimes, deep breath just doesn't cut it. We need to do something else. So having this type of tool just kind of helps us expand our toolbox. For today's session, I really just want to focus on the yellow zone. And the reason why I want to do that is because the yellow zone is kind of like a ramp up to a place I call the dangerous zone, or the red zone. Because once you're in the red zone, it's hard for children to really use strategies or tools. Can you imagine looking at this child right here, walking over to the kid and being like, hey, you know what? You need to take 5 deep breaths. Or, hey, you know what? Let's go play with some putty. Or it's just these strategies won't work. Once kids kind of topple over into the dangerous red zone, the first strategies that we need to try is to connect, empathize, and help them co-regulate to bring them down. And so when I talk about the yellow zone, I'm talking about maybe something like this, right before you can tell, like, oh, something's going to happen, something bad might happen after if they tip the scales. So like this kid who had too much sugar might be really overexcited, and then you just don't know what that sugar high is going to look like. Or if there was an argument, a kid that's clearly frustrated, or maybe just annoyed with homework, not getting things to work. These are all classic, I would say, peaks that can be observed in the yellow zone. And so the tool that I want to share with you today is when to use my yellow zone tools. And it's actually more like a reflection sheet to look at the situation kind of as an observer and helping kids to identify themselves. So how does my body feel? What do I look like? How do I feel? How do I act? And start exploring those and having those conversations with your kid and having a reflective kind of time with different situations. The great thing by having this kind of moment is that you can be a real role model in these periods of facilitating the conversation, but also giving examples of how you regulate yourself when you feel like you are in that yellow zone. I think there was a session like a while back in the beginning, and I shared a little bit about a book called A Child Picks Up on Everything, and how children are kind of like sponges. And so kids are looking, they have eyes, and you spend a lot of time with them at home because of COVID. And so I feel like you are the best teacher there is outside of school, because they're always constantly looking at how you're responding to things, reacting to things, and also probably mimicking those different ways. This is a second tool, second strategy that I want to leave with you is track, record, data, reflect. So like I shared, similarly to this tool, this is kind of similar, but once you identify the different strategies that your child likes to use, you can start putting them down and then talking about it. Hey, you had a little moment when you dropped your food and I saw you upset. I saw you take some deep breaths. Did it work? Yes or no? And then just start logging them and then seeing what really works or not. For me, when I start making a toolkit with kids during counseling sessions, they'll say everything. Oh, you know what? When I'm upset, I like to take deep breaths. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to listen to music, and that list just goes on and on and on. And when I start engaging with them, and when they're in those zones, they'll always push back on certain things and say like, no, that would never work. And what's great is to be able to have documentation of that, and then talking to the kids after when they're in the green zone about it. Hey, you know what? You had mentioned that you would read a book, but when you were upset after you fought, like, you know what? That didn't work. Maybe we should try something else. And continuing to explore those different avenues and having that conversation. Okay, I talked for a while, so here's a little Calvin and Hobbes from me, and we're just going to take like a 10-second break while we read this through. So with this Calvin Hobbes, what I really just wanted to say was I feel like sometimes kids react and act before they think, and I do that too all the time. And it might feel like we're constantly having to go after them, chase after them, remind them, but it's not like they forgot, but sometimes they just need a little friendly reminder. So whatever their tools or strategies or how they're dealing with their frustrations, it might seem like you've already spoken to them 10, 20, 30, 40 times about it, but I feel like, it's okay. It's not like we can remember all those things all the time. Just kind of like Calvin, he just walked into the house with his boots on, but it really occurred to him later on, like, oh yeah, I did that, huh? And yeah, it's okay. And so I just wanted to point that out. For homework, I found a great YouTube video, Why Do We Lose Control of Our Brain? That kind of talks about that escalation period that I keep talking about, the yellow zone, the red zone. And I really like this video because they use the language from a book I really like called The Whole Brain Child. And they talk about the downstairs brain, the upstairs brain, specifically talking about the emotional brain and the executive brain. And how those two correlate, and focuses on children's reaction to things. So when you have time, it's a 6-7 minute video, and it's also very child friendly to watch. So you can watch it first, and if you feel like, oh, you know what, I think my kid could watch this, you could try watching them together and answering those questions with them, because you'd be surprised at how responsive kids are when they start understanding how the brain works and how capable they are at understanding those relationships. So I highly encourage you to watch it, and if you feel like it's something your children can watch with you and you can explain, do it. The resources that I placed here are the different tools that I talked about for this session, which is a blank sheet of this, and then a blank sheet of this. Yes.